Hi everybody, my name is Roman. I'm co-founder here at Ampify. In this quick tutorial, I'll show you how to use our dev tool to create an identical AMP version for an existing website without actually using any AMP development. The entire process from start to a fully functional and identical AMP version will take us about 15 minutes. For this video, I'm assuming that you are a developer and you are familiar with what AMP is and its restrictions. If not, you can read more about it in the amp.dev site. As an example, we'll be using my wife's traveling blog. Now, with the coronavirus, it's not very useful, but at least I can use it for this instructional video. This is a WordPress website built with Elementor. It's a very popular and powerful. What you see is what you get page builder, but the code it generates is far from being AMP friendly, and you'll see what I mean later in this video. I should note that what we'll do here can be applied on any website with any technology and not just WordPress. Okay, so first, let's quickly go over this page to see what challenges we have here. We have a menu, we have a submenu, we have a search form that has autocomplete of names of countries. It comes from Ajax, from the server. Clicking on it leads to the result page. We have this social sharing buttons slider that comes from the top. We have a newsletter registration form. We have a YouTube video. We have this banner that comes from the button as we scroll down the page. We have an image carousel. We have lots of content, lots of images, lots of pictures. What else? We have another leave a comment form, Instagram widget. Okay, so you get the picture. We have lots of elements that all have JavaScript. They are all dynamic. Now let's have a quick look at the source code. Right off the start, we can see that there are a number of CSS files. Pretty certainly they weigh over 75 kilobytes. You can also see that there is this unique CSS here, which Elementor puts in every post, which makes it even harder to support in AMP. Scrolling down, we can see some more CSS files, as well as some JavaScripts, which are, as you know, not supported in AMP. It becomes pretty evident that there's quite a bit of work here if we were to manually create this page in AMP. Now we can go ahead and see how to create an identical and fully functional version of this site in 15 minutes. Part of Ampify's dev tools is a browser extension. It's not mandatory to install, but it's very convenient and significantly shortens development time. We start by clicking the Amplify button of our extension, and our algorithm will convert all the HTML and CSS into AMP. It takes a few seconds to complete, and the AMP version of the page is ready. Let's switch to mobile mode and see what we've got. As you can see, we've got an AMP validation successful message, which means that this page is fully AMP compliant. Let's go over the result. Everything looks good. Yeah. Pixel perfect. Ampify's algorithm is the only one that can produce such an accurate result. If you're interested in learning more, we have another video post with an in-depth explanation about our algorithm and some of the challenges we had to overcome to get to this pixel perfect AMP conversion. Alright, half of the job is behind us in just a few seconds. So what's the remaining half? Well, it's the interactive actions which require JavaScript such as button clicks, autocomplete, sliders, and many more. Since JavaScript is not allowed in AMP, you can see that when I'm clicking on the menu button, nothing happens. We need to tell the algorithm how to handle these elements, and we'll do it using some basic JavaScript code. First, let's inspect the work we would normally need to do in order to recreate all these dynamic behaviors in AMP. For the menu, we'll need AMP actions, AMP events, and most likely AMP bind as well. For the autocomplete, we obviously need AMP autocomplete. For the subscription form, we'll need to use AMP form. And for more complex things like the banner that is pushed up, we will need to use AMP position to trigger an on scroll event. Since AMP position observer is limited to trigger only AMP animation, and it's not possible to change class names with it, we also need to use AMP animation. Finally, for the carousel, we'll need to use AMP carousel. Now, building all these components in AMP, customizing them to match the source, and learning the relevant documentation takes quite some time. I can tell you this from experience. Fortunately, we do not need to do any of that today, because with Ampify, we'll be using a syntax that most of you are familiar with. It's called jQuery. Well, almost. Let's switch to the code editor. In Ampify, we created aQuery. The idea behind it is to be as close as possible to the syntax of jQuery, but instead of manipulating the DOM, aQuery creates AMP components. The jQuery-like syntax makes this library very easy to learn, and we can mostly simply use the existing jQuery documentation. Let's quickly create the menu functionality so we'll be able to better understand the aQuery concept. My colleague will be the one who will walk you through this process.
To create the menu functionality in aQuery, let's take a look at the original site. First, let's inspect the menu button. Let's see what is being changed in the DOM when clicking the menu button. As you can see, there is an active class being added to the menu button, and also the menu itself is being toggled between display block and display none with some sliding animation in between. Now let's create the same functionality in aQuery. First, let's create a menu function. And now, just like in jQuery, we'll use the ID, and let's bind a click event. When the menu button is being clicked, we can toggle the menu class. We will use the event target, which is the menu button, and let's toggle class active. Also, we will attach a toggle slide animation to the menu. As you can see, the syntax is just like jQuery. And now let's execute everything using Ampify extension. Let's click on the extension. Okay, now let's see the AMP result. Let's click on the menu button. And as you can see, it is exactly the same functionality as in the original site. But instead of JavaScript or jQuery code, we have an AMP code that is being created. Now let's create the submenu functionality. The submenu functionality is a little bit more complex. First, we need to only attach the event on the items that have this plus sign, which you can see they have menu item has children. And when clicking one of the submenu items, you can see there is a minus class being added. And also a submenu UL is being toggled with display block or display none. Now, again, let's create the same functionality with aQuery. In order to make this video shorter, I have already created this aQuery code for the submenu. Let's quickly inspect it. As you can see, we are attaching a click event on every A element that is directly inside a menu item has children. We are toggling visibility on the next element and toggling the FA minus class on the first child of this A element. So as you can see, here is the next sibling, which is the menu. We are toggling its visibility. And the first child of the A element is the span. We are toggling the FA plus and FA minus. So now let's execute this aQuery code for the submenu. We will click on Ampify extension. Again, takes a few seconds. And the result is a fully functional menu with a submenu, just like the original website. Now let's create the search and the autocomplete. Again, let's go to the original site and inspect the search button. It is very similar to the search button. It also getting active class when clicked. And also the form is inside a container that is toggled between display block, display none, and animation. So let's create this part first. Let's copy this ID and let's create a search function. So search. And again, just like in the menu, we'll attach a click event to the search button. Okay, that should work. Let's test it. And let's go to the AMP version. And as you can see, the search box is being opened. Now the autocomplete. Creating an autocomplete with aQuery is very simple. It's just like jQuery. You can just search in Google for jQuery autocomplete. You can check the reference. Here is the documentation of the autocomplete of jQuery. Ampify-AQuery is almost exactly the same. So let's create the autocomplete. Again, to make this video shorter, I've already created the autocomplete code. As you can see, it's exactly the same as jQuery autocomplete. It accepts the source and the select event, which will submit the form once the user selects an option. Now I will click Ampify extension and compile everything to AMP. Okay, let's go to the AMP version and insert something. Yeah, you can see the autocomplete is working. If I will select an option, the form submits and it goes to the search results. As you can see with aQuery, it is very easy to do. And behind the scenes, it creates a lot of AMP code. Also, AMP complete is being created behind the scenes, making it very, very easy to use. And you don't need to handle the AMP autocomplete yourself. I'm going to skip this social button because it is exactly the same as the other two, and we will go straight to the carousel. To create a carousel, we need to do two things. First, we need to find the selector of the container and to find the selector of one of the slides. That shouldn't take us more than a few seconds. So let's inspect the image. Yeah, you can see it. Yeah, it is. This is repeats. So this means that sleek slide. I guess it should be sleek slide. This is the class of each slide. And the container, we just scroll up until we will find, slick slider. Yeah, slick slider. This is it. So now let's create the slider in aQuery. It is, again, very simple. Okay, as you can see, I've already created the slider function. And now what we have to do is first we select the container. As I said, it's this slick slider. Okay, so we are selecting the slider container, and we'll use aQuery slider utility. It accepts a parameter called slides, and it should be the selector of one of the slides. So let's see. Yeah, it's this one, slick slide. Yeah, this one we don't need. And that's it. That should work and create the slider. So let's check it. We'll click on the Amplify extension. It takes a few seconds. And let's see the result. So we will slide down, and what we have here is a perfect slider. You can see that the buttons are different because we are using the default, the native AMP carousel that have the buttons with this design. But you can apply CSS that can override the design. But I think it looks better this way than the original one. Now let's create the last element, which is the most complex to do in AMP, but you will see it is extremely easy to do with aQuery. I'm talking about this sticky slider. To create this sticky slider in AMP, you will need to use several components. First, you need to use AMP position observer to know when the user has scrolled to a certain position. And after that, AMP position observer can only trigger an AMP animation. So you'll have to also use AMP animation. And together, it's quite a lot of work. But let's see how we do it with aQuery. So I have created this sticky function. And first, let's see what is the selector we're going to use. So yeah, we have here the sticky footer. Let's use this one. First, let's observe the scroll event on the window. This callback will trigger once the user will scroll to a certain point. In aQuery, we have added a third parameter that makes it very easy to define this point. So it's called enter, and you can put any value in px or percentage, and once the user will scroll, in our case, to 1300 pixels, this function will trigger. In this callback function, we will use our selector, the sticky footer, and we'll just use a simple animation slide up. Now let's check the result. Click on Amplify extension button. Compile aQuery code with the algorithm. Let's scroll a little bit. And as you can see, the sticky footer is being showed with the slide up effect once we scroll down to 1300 pixels. To create the close button, it's again very simple. I'm not even going to write the code for this one. You can see it here. I will just now compile everything for the last time, and let's go over the entire AMP version and see that everything is exactly as the original site, and it took me about 15-20 minutes to do. Okay, our AMP site is ready, including all the dynamic components. All is left to do is to deploy the code to the Amplify cloud insert the AMP meta tag manually or using Ampify's WordPress plugin, and this entire site will have a fully functional AMP version that is identical to the source, applies to new pages, and continues to mirror content changes. This is out of scope for this video, but feel free to check out our YouTube channel for deploying to Ampify Cloud video. In this tutorial, we've created a fully functional AMP version for a WordPress site, but Ampify supports any website in any technology, and in the next video, we'll step it up a notch and convert a dynamic React site with Ajax Infinite Scroll. This will be a good one, so stay tuned. If you would like to use Ampify, sign up in the link below. We're in closed beta and demand is high. There is a cap to the number of developers we can take at this point, so hurry up and make sure you'll get the chance to experience Ampify before anyone else.